Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining us for the launch of Katy Has Two Grandpas. I'm so looking forward to introducing you to everyone that was involved in the book. My dad, the co-author, will be joining us in a little bit. Katy and Maddie are going to speak during the question and answer so you can get to know them. And then Mariia Luzina, the artist who lives in the Ukraine, will also be joining us. I'm going to hand it over to my dad so he can talk a little bit to you tonight. Dad?
Hello. During my 40 years of teaching theater, I authored 8 books focusing on LGBTQ artists in the American theater. I got lots of great reviews and kudos for those books, even a couple awards. Co-authoring this children's picture book with my daughter, however, has been a real highlight of my career. This project has been like none other for me. Ironically, my daughter and I started the whole process of creating the book just as the COVID pandemic began to overtake our lives. We have seen each other only once since March. This working together on the book has been such a lifesaver. In being autobiographical, it has allowed me to express my joy of being a gay and married grandpa and part of a loving family. I have been able to share our family story, and we felt it was essential in telling this story to clearly acknowledge we two grandpas are gay. Representation is important. Comments by people who received advance copies of the book have been really heartwarming. One gay couple was so touched by the story, they wrote that they sobbed as they read the book. Another reader was so eager to read it to his grandchildren. After Mother read it to her son, he picked the book up quickly and said, "I need to read this again." A teacher read it to her classroom, and students begged her to read it again. Isn't that great, Julie?
It's just been wonderful. I actually even received some photos that we'll be sharing later. One of them is 2 grandpas reading it to their grandson, and I started to sob. We were hoping it would touch people, and it has. The main reason that I wrote this with my father is to have books out there for children. My children had every book on the bookshelf that had a gay father, a lesbian mother, a diverse family, but there was nothing that showed our family that had gay grandpas. And so we wanted to have that for other children. So that's why Dad and I decided to write this book, and that's why we worked on it. And COVID, like he said, was the perfect timing because we were all stuck inside. Dad was in Des Moines, I was in the Twin Cities in Minnesota, and our artist was living in Italy at the time. So everything was long distance, everything was via email and Skype. We were never in person except for once when we were able to get together. We're really looking forward this evening to showing you some behind the scenes video and a peek behind the curtain. Thanks for joining us, and let's get going. Well, we're about to cut away to see a wonderful video of all the behind the scenes things that happen. The photographs that we used to base the book on, the scenes of the treehouse, and all kinds of real life things that this book is really based on. So here's a 2-minute video to show you a behind the scenes look. The next video is going to feature the wonderful backyard, including the tree house and all the wonderful things that Grandpa Jack built. The girls love playing back there and often referred to it as their own Ewok village. So here it is. The next video that we're going to be showing is of Mariia Luzina, our artist. She was living in Italy while we worked on the book. It was during COVID and she was in the lockdown, so couldn't leave her apartment except to walk the dog. So many times the book was the thing that really made her day. I'm so looking forward to showing you how we made the story come to life, taking photographs and ideas and sketches, and she turned them into the beautiful images that are our book. So sit back and let's take a look at Mariia.
We are so excited to share our brand new book with you. So pretty soon, just sit back and relax. Julie will put her theater degree to use and share it with everyone. But while watching, keep an eye out for Fluffy,
Yes.
the hamster who appears on 8 pages. I would like to read you the dedication for our book. Thank you to our spouses, Ray Lyford and Jack Barnhart, for all their behind-the-scenes love and support. A special thank you to Ruth Shanky, a wonderful mother to Julie, grandmother to Katie and Maddie, and former wife and dear friend of Robert.
Katy Has Two Grandpas, written by Julie Shanky Lyford and Robert A. Shanky. Art by Mariia Luzina. Today is a big day at school. Mrs. Brown has a big announcement, and Katy is excited to find out what the surprise will be. She rattles off idea after idea to Maddie, her big sister, as they walk to school. In the hallway, Ivy comes up to her and asks, "Katy, do you want to play a game?" Katy doesn't say anything. Peyton says, "She's not going to answer you. Katy doesn't like to talk. No one can understand her lisp." Katy's best friend Shakti notices she looks sad. "Let's go play zoo with all the animals," he suggests. Katy smiles and they go off to play. A little while later, Mrs. Brown claps to get the students' attention and asks them to come sit down for the circle time. "Do you know what holiday is this weekend? Can anyone guess?" she asks. Mikey shouts, "Is it Pizza Day?" "No, silly," Mrs. Brown says with a laugh. "We're going to have a party and invite our grandparents to celebrate Grandparents' Day. Today, you'll all paint pictures of fun things you do with them. If you don't have grandparents who can join us, you can invite someone else you love." Shakti asks, "What are you going to paint?" "I think I'm going to paint my family biking up a mountain." Shakti keeps talking, but Katy has stopped listening. Katy's busy thinking of all the fun things she does with her grandpas. Grandpa Bob and Grandpa Jack are two of her favorite people, and she can't wait to have them visit her classroom. She starts to think about what she should paint. Mrs. Brown walks over to Peyton. She asks, "What are you painting?" "I'm painting us at a carnival. We rode up a huge Ferris wheel. It went way, way up into the sky," Peyton exclaims. Katy listens nervously. She doesn't want to talk in front of Peyton because she's scared he'll make fun of her lisp. Mrs. Brown smiles and turns to Katy. "What are you painting?" After a pause, Katy quietly answers, "I'm painting my grandpa and grandpa pushing me up high on a tire swing." Mrs. Brown replies, "That sounds like fun." But then she leans down and says quietly, "Don't you mean Grandpa and Grandma?" "No," Katy insists, "I mean Grandpa and Grandpa." Mrs. Brown says, "I know that having a lisp makes it hard for you to say some of your letters. It's Grandpa and Grandma." "No," Katy stammers, "I mean Grandpa and Grandpa." The bell rings and interrupts them. Mrs. Brown announces, "All right, it's time to go home. On Grandparents' Day, we'll have you introduce your visitors to the class and show off your paintings." Shakti sees that Katy is upset. "Are you okay?" he asks. Trying to hold back her tears, she mumbles, "She didn't understand me. I said Grandpa and Grandpa. Why can't anyone understand what I'm saying?" Katy rushes away to her locker. Maddie comes to get Katy to walk home. "Maddie, my teacher doesn't understand me. When I say Grandpa and Grandpa, she says I'm wrong. She keeps saying it's my Grandma and Grandpa, but it's not. And she says we have to talk in front of the class when Grandpa and Grandpa come to visit. I don't want them to come. I can't talk in front of the class. Everyone will laugh at me." Katy sobs even harder. Take a deep breath. Let's go back. I'll help explain what you said and remind Mrs. Brown that you are scared to talk in front of the class. You know our grandpas will understand you, right?
Katy thinks for a minute and then nods in agreement. Mrs. Brown sees that Katy has been crying. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" Katy doesn't answer. Maddie says, "Katy is upset because you didn't understand her. Our two grandpas will visit, and they're married to each other." Mrs. Brown says, "Oh, I'm so sorry, Katy. I misunderstood you. I didn't know. Please invite them to our party so we can all meet them and you can introduce them to her class." Katy shakes her head frantically. Mrs. Brown is confused and looks to Maddie for an explanation. Maddie says she really wants them to come, but she's scared to introduce them. Mrs. Brown smiles. "You don't have to introduce them if you don't want to, but they can still visit." Katy nods and smiles slightly, rubbing tears from her eyes. A few days later, the room buzzes with excitement as they all work to decorate the classroom for their grandparents. Mrs. Brown says, "Thank you all for helping us celebrate Grandparents' Day. The children painted pictures of things they like to do with you. Anyone who wants to share will tell us something about their painting. Who would like to start?" Many children raise their hands. While they're describing their artwork, Katy tries to build the courage to talk in front of the class. Grandpa Bob notices how quiet she is. He leans down and whispers, "It's okay. Even if they don't understand what you're saying, we will." Katy smiles, takes a deep breath, and raises her hand timidly. Mrs. Brown calls on her. "These are my two grandpas. And know what?" She pauses, starting to get excited. "They're married to each other." The kids clap and Shakti cheers, making Katy laugh. "What are some of the fun things you like to do with your grandpas?" asked Mrs. Brown. Katy thinks before responding. "We've done so many fun things, but my favorite thing is playing in their backyard. They have a huge 2-story treehouse and a tire swing that goes over a big waterfall." Peyton exclaims, "Wow! Where do you get one of those?" Katy giggles. "You have your grandpas build it." Mrs. Brown comes over to Katy. "You did a great job talking in front of the class. I know that was scary for you. Thank you for sharing your grandpas with us today." Grandpa Jack leans down to Katy. "Great job today. How about we end the day with some ice cream?" Katy cheers and says, "Let's go." Meet the real family. Meet the authors. Julie Shanky Lyford. Julie lives in the Twin Cities with her husband Rafe, daughters Maddie and Katy, rescue dog Wallace, bearded dragon Evan, and Rosie Boa, Milo. An LGBTQ+ activist in Minnesota, Julie lobbied for same-sex marriage before it became legal, and, trained by Minnesota United for All Families, traveled the state giving speeches to help pass the vote. Robert A. Shanky. Robert, a retired college theater professor, has published several books featuring LGBTQ+ theater artists in America. 3 times his books have been finalists for the Lambda Literary Award. His biography of playwright Mercedes DaCosta won Forward Magazine's Book of the Year award. Robert and his husband Jack have been together for over 35 years and live in Des Moines.
My 3 favorite ladies.
Welcome back. We are so excited to introduce you to the stars of the book. We've got Katy and Maddie right here. Katy is on the cover, and for those of you who haven't seen the book yet, there's Maddie and Katy together. We're going to work on some questions and answers that we've gotten from people that we'd like to share. Katy and Maddie are going to ask Dad and I some questions, and then we will ask them some questions.
What inspired you to write the book?
When you were little, you had a very strong lisp, and the teacher had a really hard time understanding you. And there was a day that you were going to go visit your 2 grandpas, and the teacher asked you, and you said, "I'm going to visit my grandpa and my grandpa." and the teacher corrected you thinking you were saying it wrong, and you weren't. And you got very, very determined and kept telling the teacher you were saying it right, until we finally were able to let the teacher know why. That story stuck with us forever, and when Dad and I started thinking about wanting to have some books with gay grandpas in them, we thought that would be a perfect story.
I couldn't hear.
How long did it take to write the book?
Well, we started thinking about it, 6, 7 years ago. And because we both got busy with other things, Julie got busy raising you two girls, and I got more and more busy with my retirement plans and writing my own books. But finally, it was actually when Jack and I were off in Mexico this past year that your mother, Julie, decided on her own, we have got to tackle this. And so when we got back from Mexico, one of my first emails from her was all this stuff that she had done behind my back to prepare for it. Well, at first I was sort of overwhelmed by it. But the more I looked at it, the more I thought about it and analyzed it. She had done a tremendous amount. I don't know when she actually began doing all of that stuff. But then we thought, okay, we got to go with this. And so it's taken us like a year.
When Dad was in Mexico, we surprised him and contacted Mariia for the first time, our illustrator. And I got the example illustrations, and that's what I showed him when they first got back from Mexico on a Zoom call. They were quite surprised. One question that I get a lot is, did Katy really have a lisp? Maddie's a good one to answer that, and so is Dad. I'm going to let Dad start with it. Dad, do you remember what would happen with Katy with her lisp?
She wouldn't talk. And I remember oftentimes visiting, and I would say to you or somebody, I can't get her to say anything to me. I did not really know that much that it was because of a lisp. But she just was silent a lot of the time. Not anymore.
Well, and Maddie was really her lifesaver during that time period. Do you remember?
I was going to say, I remember the opposite. I remember being the one person she was comfortable talking with, and she would just talk and talk and talk, and I understood like every other word, but I just kind of nod along and be like, yeah, that's really cool. Because it wasn't that she was a quiet kid or that she was a shy kid, it was just that she was scared to talk, and she was scared to be misunderstood. So that was a very real thing that we had to deal with.
And Maddie would often be the one to translate for her for people. Do you remember any of it?
I don't remember having a lisp. I remember going to speech therapy, and my friends have told me that they were jealous of me because I got to leave school to go to speech.
Yeah, her school did a really great job with making it fun. She got to leave and play games, and meanwhile she was getting her speech fixed. But it never really felt like work, it was just fun.
Grandpa, what was your favorite book as a kid?
That's a little hard to answer since I was a kid so many years ago. But, all we ever read when I was a kid was the school books of Dick and Jane and Sally and Spot. They were all white kids in upper middle class homes, and there was never any kind of diversity of sex or race or anything. So we were very kind of secluded and cheated, if you will, with reality, with what we were being taught.
What about you, Maddie?
I've always been super into fantasy stuff, and I was obsessed with Harry Potter as a kid, all the books, all the movies, anything I could get my hands on. What
Yeah.
about you?
I would say the one that Dad probably read the most to me was Make Way for Ducklings. That was always one of my favorites.
Yes.
And we even went and saw the statues when we went out to Boston. I got to see the statues in the park. So what about you? I know which one I read to you the most, but do you remember what it was?
There's a book called There's a Monster at the End of This Book. I just really liked it. I thought it was really funny. It was a cute picture book.
And she had a Grover that she carried around everywhere.
How did you find your artist?
That was really difficult because at first when you start reaching out to publishers, they say that they want to assign an artist and you don't necessarily have control. And Dad really and I really wanted to have a certain look and feel of the book. So when he was in Mexico, I started looking around and discovered a site called Upworks, which is kind of like Etsy for artists, and looked at all kinds of different artists' work and found Mariia, whose artwork I loved, and asked her to do some demo images and illustrations. She sent them to me, fell in love with her work, showed them to Dad, and then that's where we went from.
How difficult was it to get the book published?
Dad, you want to go with that one?
Well, originally, when we were trying to get a publisher, what we found out was that most publishers say you have to have an agent. And so you don't go directly to the publisher, you've got to go through this middle person. Well, we had no agent, so that was one of sort of the put-offs that we had. I joined an organization that sort of dealt with self-publishing. I couldn't find much of anything there either, so everything laid sort of dormant for a couple of years until, again, Julie got behind this and said, hey, let's do something, and she found Wise Inc.
Now, Wise Inc.
When I came back from Mexico, that was also announced to me that she wanted to do Wise Inc. And of course, I'm thinking, well, what else did you look at? Well, she showed me this spreadsheet of like 20 publishers or so that she'd already looked at and had analyzed them all. And I thought, okay, I guess that's where we go with Wise Inc. And I'm so glad we did, because not only are they more friendly to sort of diverse issues, but they're extremely helpful. We could never have gotten this done as quality as it is without their support.
And I actually have a clip from Wise Inc. that they shared with us that I'll show right now, and then we'll come back to the questions and answers.
I'm Victoria, the project manager at Wise Inc., who helped Julie and Bob make Katy Has Two Grandpas. Julie and Bob both know that they are not the only people in the world who have ever been hurt by someone else's misconception of family, and I think that's why they wrote this. Katy Has Two Grandpas is part of a movement in children's literature to really represent the real world, the people we love and the people who love us.
Well, I would like to ask the two girls how they felt about being in the book.
I can go first. It's cool to be in a book. I honestly didn't know it was gonna happen until recently, and I didn't have much choice, but I think it's cool, and it's cool to be a part of a book that's so historical like this.
I'm glad I got to be in the book, because I knew it was going to be Katy's grandpas, and I knew that Katy was going to be the main character, and I don't really mind, but I was just kind of excited to be able to see myself at all in there and see the artist rendition of that, which I think is amazing to see myself in art in a book that kids are going to be reading.
And in the book,
If I can interject here, I think what is really important, though, is the first person to help Katy was Maddie in that classroom situation. She was sort of in many ways the solution to that problem.
yeah,
What can I say?
Will there be another book?
sure. Do you want to be in a book, Maddie?
Sure. I don't know.
Dad, what do you think? You want to do another book?
I'll do another book. I think a perfect book would be the challenges of Maddie of trying to go to a college that may not even have classes. I can't imagine what it's going to be like if they don't have in-person
I
classes.
don't want to imagine what it could be like.
Yeah, yeah. So these small children in the book are now going to be a freshman in college next year, and next year you will be
I will be a junior.
upperclassman.
An upperclassman.
Go ahead.
What surprised you the most about all the comments and reviews you got?
How much the book is touching people. I knew that we were trying to be sure that people were included, that we were, showing grandpas in a book, gay, married grandpas, but getting multiple comments from people saying that they actually were sobbing when they read the book, or that it made them tear up, really warms my heart. And I know Dad was feeling the same way, that it's just amazing how much it is affecting people in that way.
Well, and I think that even though it was one of our goals at the beginning, was to make sure that gays had representation, I don't know that I was so aware of how important that was to so many people,
Yeah.
that they be represented clearly in the book.
And we did that because we thought it would be interesting and a good thing to have, but just seeing how it's affecting people so much has really warmed our hearts.
I mean, I went in and got my hair cut the other day, and while I was there, the barber was just going on and on about how great the book was and how it made her trainer start crying because of how much it touched him. And it's crazy that these people that I barely even know are gonna know my name and know my story. Like, that's just insane to think about.
Well, we really are looking forward to you reading the book. You can find it online. There'll be a scroll at the end with all the different places you can buy it. And locally, there will be at different bookstores as well. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. Thanks, Grandpa Bob and Katie and Maddie for joining us. And thank you, everybody. Good night.
Bye.
Good night. Good night.